Hello and welcome back to BTY. We're glad to join you for another session today. And today we'll be hopping into the topic of what to do when you feel like you're taking a step back in your self improvement. And yeah, this could be also termed as personal development, where perhaps you feel like you're taking steps back instead of going forward. And I'm sure many of us have asked this question to ourselves, why we got into this place of moving backwards and feel like we're kind of stuck. And we might have also asked why or how we could actually get out of that place. So, before we hop into this conversation, Michael, tell us, how have you been doing, man?
So good, brother. Excited to be back on an episode of BTY with you, man. But I've been very, very well. Feeling blessed. I've been working hard. And what's been happening on your side, man?
Yeah, I must say things have been going great on my side. Just been adjusting my schedule a bit with studies that have started, as well as me still being on my internship. So yeah, I must say it's been quite a smooth transition, and it's been quite easy at like up to this point. But I must say we also haven't dived as deep into our studies, but hope to be keeping it on such a good pace, man.
Glad to hear it, man. I'm sure you'll have to keep adjusting, especially when exams come around. But you got this, man.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so to hop into the topic, man, I think this is something that anyone who has been on self-improvement for, let's say, a bit longer than just a few weeks, or maybe even a few days, I think if you've been on self-improvement for something towards a few months, and you will have reached a point where, in the beginning you have a lot of motivation. Maybe you started when you watched a YouTube video and it just sent you into this self-improvement craze, and you're feeling super motivated and you're seeing all the results from this hard work that you're putting in. But there will come a point when maybe something changes in your life and you start to realize that you are sinking back into your old habits, perhaps the bad habits, and maybe losing some of the good habits that you have been working so hard to implement in your life. So when you reach this kind of place, man, it can be quite discouraging, and a lot of people might not ever climb out that hole because they'll think, well, maybe self-improvement is just not for me. If I've fallen right back into my ways, then how will I ever get back? So yeah, it's quite a dangerous place to be in, man, but definitely not a place that you have to stay. And you can get back into a place where you are moving forward again and actually even going past where you were beforehand. So Dan, I want to ask if you have ever been in a situation like this, and if so, what would you say were some things that helped you to get out?
Yeah, so if I'm being honest, I have been in this situation quite a couple of times since I've become, aware of improving myself and
I get you.
grasping or cultivating a growth mindset. So I would say the first thing I would do when I get into such a situation is when I notice that I'm not doing things as I supposedly want to do, and like you said, the good habits start to slack and the bad habits start to be increasing, I would become aware of this and I'd sit down with myself and ask why I am in this spot in the first place. And once I get to realizing why I've started taking steps back, that's when I can figure out how to move forward. Yeah, so before I explain a bit more on that, have you also been in quite a similar situation and how did you tackle it?
Definitely, man. I think I can almost say that having started this job, like we've told the viewers many times before, and everyone that's watching, Daniel and I have been studying for the last how many years, and now getting into the working world, and working that sort of 9 to 5 job that you sort of have to start out with. And I
Yeah.
think definitely when that sort of thing came about, I no longer had the time to approach self improvement the same way that I was doing before. So I'd say quite recently I was actually in a spot somewhat like this, because just the time that I used to have available to me to go to the gym, to read, to do all the things that push me forward. As obviously work is pushing yourself forward, but it's not really part of your self improvement journey per se. I mean, it is, but it's only one facet, and if you're spending all your hours on that, you might not be able to spend any time on the other side of things. So quite recently I'd say I was in a spot like that, man, and I had to. I think the first thing that I would say is to hold yourself accountable. So this can look like a few different things, and I'm gonna outline these now. And basically, I think a great way is to have a friend who might be on self improvement as well. And obviously, I think both of us, man, it's really cool. For me, that's definitely having you in my life has been great. Because when I know that, like, whenever we're catching up, man, we're usually talking about how our productivity is looking, and sometimes if I'm starting to slack, I can always reach out to you and be like, look, man, and you will even hold me accountable. Maybe if I don't even bring it up, you'll be like, hey, man, how many times have you been hitting the gym this week? And you got to give an honest answer there. So it's great to have a friend to hold yourself accountable, because this will just keep you honest to the fact of the bad habits creeping back in, and maybe the good habits falling off, like we've mentioned, man. So having a friend to hold yourself accountable will just mean that you won't be able to get away with it. You might slack for a week, but then if you speak to that friend and be like, look, man, I completely slacked off this week. I didn't do any gym, I didn't do any reading, I didn't do whatever it is that I'm working on, and that friend will call you out for it. So having a good friend is great for that. Even another example, perhaps you don't have a good friend who's on self-improvement, something that you could do is to either write it down. And actually, what I would say is I invite anyone who needs this sort of thing to write it down in the comments section below. Basically, what you are aiming to do and what you want to hold yourself accountable for. And even that comment will always be there, and that'll be reminding you that, look, I put it out there in the world that this is what I want to do. This is how many times a week I want to do it. And if you're not sticking to that sort of standard, then, you've got to be honest with yourself and start improving. So that's the different ways that holding yourself accountable can look. But it's very important. Otherwise, you might start letting yourself get away with these things, man.
Yeah, true. So also getting into more ways of how I've personally handled this is by taking responsibility. And this is sometimes a very hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, and even for myself, where you kind of have to be honest with yourself in saying that this is my fault, and like I've looked at everything else and I can't blame anyone but myself. And this is important. Like you said, even with starting a 9 to 5 job, I could have easily blamed the job and said, because I'm doing the job, I don't have time to like work on other sectors sectors of my life. Maybe my physicality, my mental health, my emotionality. And that's where you have to stop blaming others or external factors and start looking internally.
It's true.
And taking responsibility and saying, okay, I've got a 9 to 5 job now, or my studies have started, I don't have as much free time anymore. So how am I going to adjust my schedule so that I still make time for improving other areas in my life? And a piece of advice I can give you is that, let's say in the evenings you only have 3 to 4 hours open, and yes, it's important to give yourself a bit of rest and just to chill, to calm down from what happened at work. It might have been stressful, and work in itself is always a bit draining, like
For sure.
for any job. As much as you love it and you're passionate about it, you're still gonna be tired after the day's work. So what you can do then is say that, yes, I need to read, I need to gym, and I need to journal. So maybe tonight I'm just gonna do 2 of those, and then tomorrow evening I'll do the other 2. So that's also a way you can still keep on with your self-improvement and not totally wind like not totally neglect it, but
Mm.
just schedule your things differently so
Very
that
true.
you're still doing self-improvement, even if it's at a bit of a slower rate. And if you were gymming, let's say 2 hours per day, now you can make it 1 hour, even half an hour, as long as you're still getting that exercise. That's still you going forward. So yeah, you have to be honest with yourself and take that responsibility when you're trying to get out of the spot of moving backwards. And once you do that, you'll see that it becomes a bit easier to then start moving forward again, even if it's small steps.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. I think you fall into a place like this, like you mentioned there, man.
Yeah.
Perhaps when your schedule changes, maybe nothing in your life has changed, and you just started to slack. But usually it can be, especially for those of us who've been on supplement for quite a bit longer, and the consistency
Yeah.
is no longer an issue. Once you've built up that certain level of consistency, you can usually stay there until something changes. Then you fall out of routine. Maybe you're on holiday now. It's funny, man. Sometimes it can either be a lack of time, and sometimes it can even look like too much time. Like when you're on holiday and you don't have that routine anymore that you used to of like waking up early, then going to the gym, then going to work or whatever you are busy with. So it can even be
Hmm.
something like that. But yeah, that change in routine can
Yeah.
lead to this sort of space. And I think it's very good what you mentioned, man. Just to adjust your schedule, your self improvement schedule and journey might not look the same, which means you might have to take down that schedule that you had up on your wall and sort of work on it a bit and change things up. But once you've done that,
Yeah.
I'm sure that you can start to pick up those good habits again. And
Hmm.
yeah, give yourself
I agree.
that option to actually adjust your schedule. But I wanted to have a quick
Yeah.
word, man, about vision because I think this is quite an important thing as
Hmm.
well that can lead to this.
Yeah.
And yeah, if not a change in schedule, can maybe be because you might have lost a bit of vision as to why you started
Hmm.
self improvement, why you're on this journey in the first place. Maybe you became complacent and life is looking good, and you sort of think like, why do I have to continue with this if my life's already in a good place? So
Hmm.
yeah, that just comes down to at the end of the day, how high your ambitions are. And I think
Yes.
for any young person, it can be easy to get to a point where you start to feel like very happy with things. You might have like a good
Hmm.
relationship now, some good friendships, let's say, and when you have those kind of things in place, it can become very easy to be complacent.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, what drives our self improvement journey forward is the want or the need to get into a position that you aren't in right now. But let's say you're in that position,
Hmm.
and now you're trying to think, okay, my vision is no longer the same. Maybe beforehand you were trying to
Hmm.
get a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever it is, and now you're in that place. So your vision might need to change up. So man, I want to ask you, what would you say if you're in that place where perhaps you've achieved the things that you initially wanted to set out with your vision, and now you're in this
Hmm.
place where you don't know how to move forward because your vision, isn't the same anymore.
Yeah. Now I must say, this has been something that I've been like battling with quite a couple of times.
For sure.
It can be a stick or twist moment, like First Man says,
Sure.
but it gets to a place once you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, where you sort of fall off a bit. Also, this is where you can start regressing, because it's like, okay, I've got to where I was now, but what's next? That initial feeling of achievement falls away,
Mm,
or sometimes you don't take the time to celebrate what you've achieved and you don't give yourself enough credit.
sure.
So this becomes like a fine balance between whether you're going to be complacent or whether you're going to be ungrateful, because here you have to be grateful for what you've achieved and where you're currently at, but you also shouldn't become complacent where you're like, okay, this is where it's at for me. Though in life there's people with different personalities, where you've got different goals, different visions for your life, and maybe what you've achieved is where you're feeling content and you kind of want to stick to that. But then where your vision comes in now is to set up your schedule in a way where you're able to maintain this. And sometimes maintaining this is putting in extra work. Just like, if I have to use an example, going for a jog. When you're running the first kilometer, it might be easy to run at 4 minutes per kilometer. But then when you're doing the second one, it will be easy to start running 4 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer. So this is where you kind of have to put in extra effort, which means you'll get a bit more tired, to keep it at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, or even initially keep it at the 4 minutes which your first kilometer started off, so that you can finish it at the same place that you, or at the same time that you started per kilometer, so that your average stays the same. But then what I would say personally I had to do is, when I set up my vision, I had a long-term goal and I have short-term goals to get to the long-term goal. But I know with my long-term goal, it's a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
So that means that in 6 years, I think, from when I wrote that plan, and I think we were doing it that same year in Cape Town.
100%.
I might be a bit wrong. But then after that 6 years is done, then I might have already achieved what I wanted to in those 10 years. And that's where I'll have to make time and sit down with myself to look at what I want to do for the next 10 years or the next 20 years. And by then my vision would probably have drastically changed. My ambitions would have changed. My goals will change. Because then maybe now I'll have children at that time, and when I've got kids, then I'll start to live for them and have goals to set up a good study fund, or help them achieve their personal goals. Like, things change. But yeah, that's just when it comes to vision, just getting back to the point, is you'll always have to create a vision that's realistic in where you're at, and make sure that it doesn't become unrealistic, because when it becomes unrealistic, you're going to start self-sabotaging and feeling unworthy, and just give up and get to a nihilistic mindset where you're like, it's not worth it, because what I've set up, it just feels so unachievable. So in your vision, you also have to be honest with yourself and set realistic goals, and once you've met them, then you can go for more and more challenging goals, just so that you ease yourself in and that you can be your best supporter and not your worst critic.
That's good, man. Appreciate those nuggets of wisdom. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Sure, when we are setting goals that involve little Daniels or little Michaels running around, man. That'll be an interesting time.
Yeah, no, true.
But yeah, in the meantime, I think my wish for everyone is that we can. I think, like you say, you have to have a vision that is very. I think your vision is always changing. It's not going to be the same, because, like you say, man, you might have one thing that you have in mind for your life when you're 16 and you set this 10-year goal. But then by the time you hit 22, things might be looking different, and you have to change things up and have a, like you said, take the time and have a look at your vision. So if that's something that you haven't done for a good while, and like we mentioned earlier, you're in this place, well, I think the very first thing that you need to do is reevaluate what your vision looks like, and like you said, man, set realistic goals for the short term and the long term. But yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation, man. I think hopefully it's been beneficial for anyone who's in this place, and maybe even if you aren't in this place, it'll just be a good warning for when you are in that kind of position. One final thing that I'll end off on before we close, man, is just to not make excuses. That's one thing I want to say, is that something that creeps in with self-improvement quite easily, and I'm guilty of it for sure, man. And that's why, you have to at the end of the day actually be quite harsh on yourself, and in that you can't accept excuses. If you are rewriting this new vision, and you say like, oh, I'm a bit older now, I don't have to do as much work or whatever it is. Maybe you're making an excuse like you said earlier, I don't have enough time. If you're going to let yourself make excuses, you won't actually get back into that position where you're moving forward again. But if you are a bit tight and tough on yourself and you say, I'm not going to make excuses, if an excuse comes up in your brain, you cut it out and say like, no, well, it's just tough. It's like Hamza, someone that we like to listen to, he always says that you got to do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. So, yeah, man, I hope it's been a good conversation for everyone to listen to. But yeah, better than yesterday. Things are looking up. We are very excited. Daniel, I know that we have teased a little announcement for something that's happening later this year. The men's conference. We've put out the dates, which is April the 13th. So yeah, looking forward to that. I think you guys should definitely just keep your eyes peeled to the Instagram, to YouTube, or we will be posting all the information here on all our channels, wherever you can find us. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled if you're staying in Namibia, and even if you aren't staying in Namibia and you want to make a trip, it's not something that you're going to want to miss. We're going to be covering all bases of self-improvement and really equipping young men with what they need for their futures, man. So I'm very excited for that. But yeah, thank you for the conversation, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for
always a pleasure,
for listening to us and for getting involved by leaving comments down below. Please do give us video ideas, just things that you guys want to hear about. We are on our self-improvement journey, and there's so many things that we can share. But we'd love to hear your perspectives and hear what you guys are actually struggling with, and where we can be of use and have fruitful conversations. So if you do want to stick around for that and see more content like this, then also consider subscribing to this channel and leaving a like, because that'll help us to keep growing and reach more and more and grow this community even more. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the next one. Much love from Better Than Yesterday.